Hi, this is Michelle Grove speaking. I am a transition religious educator, a part of Townsend Grove Coaching and Consulting. And tonight, April 13th, 2023, I have the great honor to introduce you to Connie Zweig, who's the author of the book, The Inner Work of Age, Shifting from Role to Soul. Connie Zweig is a retired therapist, a writer, a climate reality leader, and a citizens climate lobbyist. She's known in many circles as a shadow expert, and she's the co-author of many books and author of others, including a new one coming out in May. I was introduced to the inner work of age by my husband, Andy Townsend, and my spiritual director, Del McCormick. They studied it together in an online group, and I was enthralled by the stories I heard. This is a book for people of all ages. One of the things that Connie told me in an earlier conversation is that this is the first book that she has written where she has had the opportunity to really engage with her readership. Well, that's what this session is all about. Connie is going to tell us more about ways that we can engage with her and with this important material. She has some great ideas to offer us. Now, there's one more thing I would like to note. When Connie Zweig teaches us about our inner ageist and our societal ageism, she intersects it very profoundly with racism, sexism, genderism, classism, and many of the other biases that we confront in ourselves and our society. When we confront our inner ageist, we are invited to do the full work of dismantling the white supremacist culture and working towards that beloved community in which we all aspire. So I encourage you to enter this work knowing that there's a full spectrum of work that is intersected with it, and we can learn about it all. After Connie speaks, there are time for questions. This is going to be recorded, and those who have given permission can be a part of the recording. Thank you, Connie, for being a part of this. All right, my friends, here we go.
A little bit more about my own history before I begin the PowerPoint. I worked as a depth psychologist doing clinical practice for about 30 years and retired 4 or 5 years ago now. And this is my 6th book. I wrote in this field of the shadow, which some of you may be familiar with. My training was as a Jungian therapist, Carl Jung, and he used the term shadow to refer to the unconscious, the personal unconscious that contains all of our unacceptable, forbidden, unwelcome, and unlived feelings and qualities and behaviors. And when I put together my first collection, which was called Meeting the Shadow, it really struck a chord, and it surprised me that people were trying to understand this hidden part of human nature. Many people call it the dark side, but it's much more than that. And then I wrote a book called Romancing the Shadow, which was a method for working with our unconscious material, especially in relationships. You may have noticed that you have repeating fights with someone, or you choose the same partner over and over again. These kinds of patterns occur because of what's going on in the shadow. There were several other books, and then as I moved into my late 60s, I was looking for material to read about age, and there was nothing about the unconscious process in aging. How do we deny age? How does it lead us to struggle with self-acceptance, to changes in body image, to ageism collectively? So I kind of recognized that I needed to write another book about the shadows of age, and that's what we're going to focus on today. I have another book coming out in a few weeks called Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path which is about really using this framework and trying to understand why so many clergy and spiritual teachers act out their shadows in destructive ways. Okay, so a little overview of my work, and now I'm going to start the PowerPoint. And we'll have lots of time to speak at the end. Can you see that clearly, Michelle? Okay, great. Okay, so what does the shadow have to do with aging and becoming an elder? And maybe you've already asked that question as you were listening to me. It turns out that our unconscious fears and images about age actually shape how we age. And that was such a startling research finding to me. Let me say it again. Our unconscious beliefs and feelings and attitudes about old age help to determine how we experience it. And I learned that when I read decades of research from Yale University psychologist Becca Levy. And that discovery made me realize that I needed to write how we meet the shadows of age. And this means that if we can detect what's hidden in the unconscious shadow about this transition, we can do something about it. We can engage the inner work of age. And here's another startling fact. The director of MIT Age Lab noted that there are roughly 8,000 days between college graduation, 8,000 days between college graduation and a midlife crisis, 8,000 days between a midlife crisis and retirement. And if we've planned well, there are another 8,000 days after retirement. So for the first time in history, this is a new stage of life. And you may have asked yourself, or your congregants may have asked you, what will I do with all that time? Or more deeply, who am I now? So if you or your friends or congregants feel lost or disoriented, if you long for more self-knowledge or gratitude, more meaning or contribution, then you can try the inner work of age. You can discover how to reorient by turning within, attuning to your soul's longing, and cultivating a deeper shift in awareness. And you can move through this passage of late life as a rite, releasing past forms, facing the unknown, and emerging renewed as an elder, filled with vitality and purpose. And so with this extended longevity, we have this first time in history, unprecedented opportunity for extended personal growth and spiritual development. We have the chance to become an elder, and I mean that in a very specific way. This book is built like a rite of passage. You go through the themes and the practices, and you cross a threshold, discovering how to make this internal shift and offer your wisdom to the common good. So let me review for you 3 online workshops that I propose specifically for UU communities. The first one is becoming an elder. Elder is a stage, not an age. It's a qualitative transition like water to ice. And that means that a 55-year-old who serves her soul's mission with authenticity and gravitas may be an elder, while an 85-year-old senior who's closed-minded and bitter and believes he's a victim is not. And that's what I mean by an internal state of mind or stage of awareness. Because unless we live in an indigenous community, we have no rite of passage to make this transition. And so I imagined that my book might serve this purpose. There are 3 steps to any rite of passage: letting go, releasing outworn roles and identities, liminality, facing the unknown and liminal space, and emerging renewed from senior to elder, or what I call role to soul. Releasing past roles and letting go of the ego's agenda may occur naturally with retirement or serious illness, or we can choose it and intentionally become an elder. When we break our identification with the roles and values of midlife, the rushing and struggling, the duties and yearning, we release the preoccupations of adulthood. When we do life repair, we allow ourselves to feel the dark emotions that hide in the shadow and begin to let go of grief, resentment, disappointment, and anger. As we release the past, we come more fully into the present moment. And some people can take yet another step, allowing the ego to recede and a more transpersonal center, whether we call it soul or spirit or higher self, to emerge. If we're fortunate, the ego bows to the guidance of greater wisdom. In the conscious aging world, this is called gerotranscendence. And then number 2 is stepping into the unknown. Uncertainty, liminal space. When we let go of our identities and strategizing for personal gain, we may feel undefined, lost, purposeless, asking again, who am I? And during this time, we may feel alone, facing fears and limits and the symbolic death of the ego. We're between trapezes, and it's uncomfortable and anxiety-provoking. This stage can be facilitated with shadow work, my method of working with the shadow, as we observe that we no longer strive for accomplishments without limits. We no longer believe the ego's fantasies of omnipotence, and we begin to trust that something larger is carrying us across a threshold. Number 3 is emerging into new beginnings. On the other side of the threshold, our center of gravity moves from ego to self, role to soul. Postmodern Western culture doesn't guide us in this way, but the inner call to elderhood is still there. It's an archetypal dynamic built into each of us, like the inner child, and it seeks expression as we move from the stage of midlife to our next chapter. In the book, I include a visualization to connect with the inner elder. There's a danger in our failure to heed this call. If we stay overactive because we're pretending to be 50, the inner elder can't emerge. Carl Jung put it this way: the afternoon of life is just as full of meaning as the morning, only its meaning and purpose are different. Whoever carries over into the afternoon the law of the morning must pay for it with damage to the soul. We can see here, actually, let me remove this. There we go. We can see that there are developmental tasks to shift from senior to elder, from an unconscious aging process to stepping into a new archetype. And each of these steps has an inner unconscious obstacle to it, a shadow. Denial of age can lead to releasing the inner ageist. That's a shadow figure in us. Identification with doing, achievement, and success can lead to releasing identification with the doer. Unfinished emotional business can lead to healing, giving, and receiving forgiveness. Unfinished spiritual business can lead to a renewed relationship with spirit or higher self, and a practice that connects us to something beyond ego. Denial of death can lead to facing mortality and practicing mortality awareness. Finding purpose can lead to contributing to the common good and creating a legacy with the time that remains. So after our heroic journeys from youth through midlife, we re-enter the story as the wise men and women who mentored us on the path. And we give our hard-won knowledge to the next generation. To do this, we need to take the empty seat that awaits us. For the world needs the wisdom and gifts of older adults. It's nourishment for a world starved of meaning. Today, as those of us who've reached the later stages of life, we are the elders we've long been seeking. Our search for others to serve as mentors and gurus and guides is over. We're the ones to pass the torch, and we're the ones who are blessed and who will bless others. So that gives you a sense, an overview, a framework for the workshop on becoming an elder. Let's move to workshop number 2. There we go. The gifts of a life review of our lived and unlived life. As the great existential philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said, life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. The effort to understand a life and repair it and find meaning in it is a natural developmental task of late life. With the loss of the ego's agenda, we can become disoriented, and a life review can help us reorient to the soul's mission and give us deeper purpose at this time. But no one teaches us really how to do this in a thoughtful, organized way. No one teaches us how to digest the life we've lived, distill the lessons from it, and turn them into wisdom. And so many of us have watched older people trying urgently to tell their stories, or reminiscing in a way that makes them appear to be lost in the past. 50 years ago, experts in the field of aging believed that this reminiscence was a sign of senility. But in the 60s, renowned gerontologist Robert Butler discovered that many older people seem to be experiencing an internal effort to come to terms with everything that happened to them. And he coined this life review. And he concluded that it's a necessary, normal task of late life, not a pathological one. Butler suggested that the purpose of life review is to recall unresolved conflicts and reconcile with them through seeing a larger picture or reframing the events. This may lead to reconciliation with estranged loved ones, making amends and forgiving them, or forgiving ourselves. In the best case, it leads us to give up denial or blame and become accountable for the life we've lived. So in this workshop, we'll explore our life stories and view them through several lenses or templates, like the body's life review or relationship life review, creativity life review, and spiritual life review. In the book, The Inner Work of Age, there are a number of interviews with spiritual teachers discussing how they're aging and how they're doing practices at this stage of life. And one of the most touching interviews was with Father Thomas Keating shortly before he died. And it really became a spiritual life review as he told me how his whole relationship to God developed throughout his life. So we can also review our lives in the framework of the hero's journey. And so the workshop will explore these various frameworks. By standing back and seeing the tapestry from the long view, we can reframe our life story. And we can realize that things unfolded in a particular way, not as we thought about it, but we can actually see, well, this didn't happen, but that door opened. And it takes time and contemplation and presence to do this. And it also possibly leads to emotional repair, because we can see where we felt hurt or betrayed and where we may not have picked up that thread and completed it. And then we can examine our spiritual beliefs and disillusionments and do spiritual repair, reaching out to others in gratitude or for reconciliation, and re-examining our beliefs. And we can choose spiritual practices that fit who we are now. So, for example, after I did my life review, I had 4 distinct careers: a meditation teacher, journalist, publishing editor, and therapist. But I only saw after the life review that they all had the same mission: to transmit information about consciousness. And so perhaps you'll see unseen meanings, synchronicities, patterns that you weren't aware of before. And as you begin to see what was repressed into the shadow, you can also choose to reclaim some of those talents and aspirations now. And in this way, we can move toward life completion with less fear and anger and regret and more gratitude. So I'm going to kind of do this briefly. The traditional life review is the ego's life review. And what we live out consciously, the people we meet, and the events we experience. And so this gives you a picture of drawing a horizontal line, dividing it into decades, and working above the horizontal line. That's the ego's life review. And you begin to fill it in, and you begin to see patterns and connections and what led to this and who led to that and so on. And then as you note down above the line what was expressed, you'll begin to start to get a glimpse. Oh, so I put here, for example, if you expressed academic or intellectual gifts, maybe some feelings were repressed in the shadow beneath the line. And if you were told to be polite and accommodating, maybe some anger was repressed. And if you were a stay-at-home parent, maybe your ambition went into the shadow. And if you had career burnout, maybe fear of retirement is in the shadow. And with retirement, there may be a loss of purpose. Okay, so this is workshop number 3. And you get a sense, I'm going quickly, but we're going to have a conversation, and you can get a sense that the first one, becoming an elder, and the second one, life review, can lead to a kind of inner work that's very stimulating and gratifying. Okay, so the third proposal for you is a workshop that explores the question, who am I? As it arises in beyond midlife, and what I call a late life identity crisis. And it may be triggered by retirement or illness or loss. And our lifelong habit of identifying with doing, productivity, image, gender, race, values, beliefs may no longer serve us, as we are called to a deeper identity. And this shift in awareness requires contemplative or spiritual practice until we can identify with who we really are. God within, Christ nature, Buddha nature, pure awareness or soul, whatever name we prefer. But we need the tools to be able to break free of the inner obstacles that block this shift. And then we can really reimagine the process of aging. And I don't mean merely doing more or doing differently. I don't use the word reinvention from the outside in. Rather, my emphasis is on the internal, less familiar terrain of the shadow, the personal unconscious, the subtle yearnings that appear in images and fantasies, the ways we respond or fear to respond to those messengers, symbolic meanings we glean from them. And as we learn psychological and spiritual practices that address the late life identity crisis, we also learn how to orient to our inner worlds, deepen our self-knowledge, and eventually shift from denial to awareness, from obligation to flow, from holding on to letting go, from distraction to presence, and from role to soul. Somebody needs to mute. I can hear conversation. So the result of this internal shift is a newfound freedom from the constraints of outworn roles, an emerging sense of becoming who we were always meant to be, and a profound gratitude for the way our lives unfolded. And as we make this shift in awareness, a natural generosity arises, and we seek to share our gifts as a lasting legacy. This is the deeper dimension of age, the universal inner journey of human development or expanded awareness, which includes the potential of this stage of life, the unfolding of our psychological and spiritual authenticity and authority, the unfolding of advanced stages of human development that are described in every religious tradition as the purpose of late life. And again, this process is not about what we do or don't do, more work, more volunteering, less work, less volunteering. It's about how we do it, the internal state of mind that can arise as we do the inner work of age. It's a unique journey for each of us, but the hunger for it is universal. So, how we imagine late life may be more important than what we do. Negative beliefs and images, as I said earlier, hidden in the shadow, influence our health as we age. Our exposure to ageist stereotypes are internalized in the brain, mind, and body. And this leads to the inner ageist, a negative self-image that rejects our aging bodies and minds. And we're turning the target of the ageist projection against ourselves. And these unconscious fears and beliefs affect physical health, mental health, memory, and the will to live. I've identified these unconscious inner obstacles of aging consciously and shifting from role to soul. We identify with youth, self-image, doing, success, the past, the body, or the mind. And because our inner obstacles are unconscious in the shadow, we need to learn shadow work to make them conscious. We need to learn a method to become aware of the cues when a particular shadow figure is emerging from the unconscious. So with the practices in the book, for example, we can uncover our inner ageist, which keeps us from self-acceptance, or the doer, which keeps us from slowing down to self-reflect, or the narrative self, which continues to tell the same stories over and over again. So in this workshop, I teach some spiritual practices to begin to help people shift their identities. Notice when the shadow character is emerging and blocking it, and then practicing moving your identity deeper into spirit. So these are three of the workshops, the themes that you'll find in my book, and the workshops that I wanted to offer to you. As I said, the book is a rite of passage to become an elder and go through the unconscious obstacles to break free of them so that we can age as a spiritual practice. If you would like to request one of these three workshops for your congregation, please email me, conniezweig@gmail.com. And please put UU workshop in the subject line so that I can catch it quickly. And then tell me which of the three you would like. And tell me your time, your location, your time zone, so that we can set up something on the calendar for you. I'm in the Pacific time zone. I assume many of you are not. So let me know that as well. I charge $150 for a 60 to 90 minute event. And I also wanted to put out another invitation. It says here, Wisdom Circles. So hundreds of people are forming free online book clubs, which I call Wisdom Circles. Michelle mentioned that she was in one. People are reading the book together and doing the practices together with the intention of aging in community. And so I wanted to offer this invitation to you as well for the people who attend the workshops. And I can help you if you wish to form wisdom circles in your churches and congregations following the workshops. Okay, thank you. I'm going to stop the PowerPoint and look forward to chatting with you.
Connie, thank you. This is really exciting. And it, even if you all have read the book or haven't read the book, I don't know about you, but I gained a lot just in the way you formulated, the process and outlined it already. So we can only imagine that the continued work can go deeper and richer. So I am ready to kind of field questions, and we can direct those, to Connie in whatever way. Questions, comments, discussion, wonder questions, whatever it might be.
I think there might be people here who don't have their cameras on. I would really love to see you.
Forgot. I just said, I think I'll be brave and go first.
Go for it.
This is a book I've been looking for, the wisdom I've been looking for, and I think is incredible. I started a program at my church, UU Church, really inspired by the over 60s group that I knew about through my friend Connie Atkins. And we've been meeting about 3 years now, I think, something like that. But no, not but it's been wonderful, but it's the gravitas of what you're talking about is what I think is lacking. And I think I would love to bring it up with our church and see about doing it.
Wonderful.
Thank you very, very much, really. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think there's so many, private groups on Zoom, just discussion groups about aging, and then institutional communities that are organizing their seniors or elders. I think most of the churches and synagogues have those groups, and they're kind of at a loss for what to do together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I just grabbed this opportunity when Michelle offered it, because I feel like this gives there are about 70 circles that I know of now. I know there are many I don't know of. But I've organized about 70 of them with 10 people. And they don't want to stop. I met with a group yesterday who's finished the book. What can we do next? Because we're not going to let go of each other, We form these friendships. And so it's very gratifying. And I hope that they're open to you, Alexandra, and that they take the opportunity.
So do I, very much.
And Alexandra, where's your congregation located?
First Religious Society of Unitarian Universalists in Newburyport, Massachusetts. Yeah.
Nice. This is fun. Good.
Right.
So,
open to questions too. Carla?
Yeah, so Connie, this really speaks to me. I am still working. I'm 60, but my children have moved out of the house. I'm starting to feel the anxiety around the next transition and sort of the empty space. So where am I right now? And would love to read the book and do the work. And for me, the congregation wouldn't be the right place. And because I work there. And I'm seeing some other directors of religious education here, and I'm wondering if we might want to think about a religious professionals group to share without my sharing with the elders of my congregation, which is less comfortable and helpful to me personally. So just putting that out there.
That's a lovely idea.
Carla, we'll talk. I think it's a great
idea. Awesome. We'll talk, Michelle. I'm looking at you, Stephanie, Andrea.
That's great. Yeah, it's really important to be comfortable because it can be challenging to face your shadows and, your fears and your difficult feelings about aging. So you want to be comfortable.
Wendy? And then Rebecca? Did I see Wendy's hand? And then Rebecca?
Yeah.
Great. Go for it.
We started an over 60s process in our church in 2015. And over the time, actually, I'm listening to what you're talking about, the stages. I mean, we've had small groups, we've had a myriad of presentations about living while dying, about will setting, about health issues. And I think it's been very fulfilling. This is the first time I'm really appreciating your workshops. It's a structured internal process of becoming an elder. And it's lovely. I'm just digesting it. And again, if we did this, Connie, how do we would get the book, and would you be our mentor, or would we be able to follow the book and do it through what you've written?
Such a good question. Yeah. So I really have found that the groups can be leaderless by rotating facilitators, because as elders, we all have experience in some kind of leadership, right? And we all know at this point how to facilitate a conversation. So my suggestion is that people rotate the leadership. You know, the group decides how often, all the logistics, how often and for how long you meet, you guys decide that. And then you start at the beginning, and I can send guidelines. I have guidelines I'll send out. But you start at the beginning, you know, with the foreword and the prologue and the introduction. And you decide how much material you want to cover for each meeting. And then my suggestion is that you don't simply remain intellectual about it, because each of the chapters has practices. And so part of the decision for each group is, how do you do these practices together and make it experiential, so that the inner work begins slowly and then it kind of builds, and you do it at home and you can do it in the group, and you can respect your own limits. You know, you can have boundaries. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But yes, you know, you're making a point that I've thought about a lot, which is that most of the books and teachings about this stage of life are practical. They're about aging in place, or ageism, or healthcare issues, or isolation, or, you know, they're about social, political, medical issues primarily. And this is psychology and spirituality.
Yeah.
So this is inner work. And I recognize that some people are not oriented that way, and they won't, you know, they're not going to be attracted to it. But I've found that there are people who are waiting for it. You know, they're just so that they actually, when they see it, they know that's what they're looking for. So I would suggest that
How many weeks? What's the time length that where you do a good job, where it's, and I realize that there could be spin-offs from it afterwards in self-led groups, but for the actual structure.
Well, the book, you know, each group is deciding that for themselves, Wendy. The book has 13 chapters and an epilogue and a prologue and foreword. So it could be in a year, it could be one a year. If it's a monthly meeting, if it's twice a month, you know, it could go quicker than that. Some of the chapters are very dense. I mean, there's a lot of, the way that I write, you're saying, Emily's agreeing with me. You know, the way that I write, there's a lot of material in each chapter. So each group can decide, or the facilitator for that group can decide, we're gonna take 2 meetings on, you know, chapter 3 or whatever it is. So I'm not really prescribing all these logistical things, because I think, you know, we're all adults and we can decide, we can figure that out together in a conversation. In the first meeting, we can figure that out. But I do hope it'll be experiential, you know, not only thematic discussion. Yeah. Emily, have you looked at the book?
Yeah, Stephanie Kimball and I, so Stephanie's also on this call, have been leading a group using your book for the past, what is it, maybe 3 months, something like that. We're on chapter 5. And they, you know, each chapter is so rich and so deep and so much to delve into. It is in no way a quick read, any of these chapters. And it's also not something that feels tedious. It is so engaging, and so each piece demands something of us.
Mhm.
It's not a sit back and read it kind of experience at all.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and the
you.
group just is so hungry and appreciative of both the, all of the things that you write, but also the practices at the ends of the chapters.
I have a deep belief that one of the things we let go of as we become elders are the shoulds. So there is no way I would say you should do that, or you should do it my way, or you should do it anyone's way, or you should do it for X amount of time. I mean, that's just not my place to say that. So, I imagine that as Unitarians, you have diverse practices. Many people come from different lineages. You're fairly eclectic, I believe. And you can bring whatever practices work for you to this book. I mean, I really wrote it non-denominationally with the hope that people from any tradition could feel a resonance, So, in my practice, I sit in meditation an hour a day, but that's not going to work for everybody. In an interview yesterday, this guy said to me, well, tell us how you meditate so we can do that. I'm not going to do that. So, and I also think we do practices with different intentions. There's a lot of talk now about spiritual awakening, but that might not be your intention. Your intention might be to deeply relax and relieve stress, and that's fine. So I really can't say for other people. I just wanted to kind of open doors to possibilities. And, that was the purpose of giving all those practices. And finding what resonates for you. I sometimes think, finding a spiritual practice is a little like dating, because you're looking for that feeling of a fit. You want to feel that resonant harmony, that fit. Ah, got it, like when you recognize a person. So again, that's so personal. That's so individual. And what resonates for me isn't going to resonate for you. So I can't prescribe these things.
And Rebecca, you also. So thank you for waiting. This is fun.
Oh, that was very helpful, actually. I wanted to thank you, Connie. I liked, you hooked me when you talked about attitudes of aging. One of the things that I have found as a blessing in my Unitarian congregation is I have seen such healthy models of aging. I'm retired about 6 years, and I'm in my I'll be 74 next month. And I look at women, mostly women, 10 years my senior, who are still out there with more energy than I ever had. But I have found, the shadow side also spoke to me. I've done a lot of soul collage in the past couple of years, and that is a practice that does a lot of looking at the shadow side. And it has been very helpful in my spiritual growth to recognize patterns and, marrying the same man in different forms 3 times, and a lot of things that I carried from my very earliest years that I'm trying to now reshape myself. And I just want to say, I think one of the best parts of being retired, particularly having worked as a teacher and then as a religious educator, is letting go of shoulds, of really having been raised, what will the neighbors think? To no longer care what the neighbors think, because I can be who I want to be. I'm not hurting anyone by being myself.
Yeah.
So I had talked to my minister about the fact that I was going to be attending this workshop, and I think I will go back and talk with her. But I think for our group, probably looking at the book certainly is going to be where I start anyhow. So thank you. I really appreciate your insights, and I look to learning more.
Thanks. It's really good for me to hear kind of what strikes you, what sticks to the bones. And I think modeling, as a child, I didn't have a single positive model of an elder. And it helps when we're in our 60s and 70s to have people in their 80s and 90s, but that's not what shapes the psyche. It's when we're young that, those attitudes about aging kind of get seeded, get planted, right?
Yeah, but in my 30s and 40s, I was fortunate enough to be, again, now those women were probably the age I am or younger, but they were models. And I remember a woman who's long gone talking about how one of the hardest parts was letting go of, not just forgetting your car keys, but having to let go of driving and having to let go of all the things that
yes, that's right.
So
yes, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. This is good. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, musings? The other thing I would offer is that, and I'm going to put this in the chat, is that Connie has a website that really dives into the books that she's written. And then if you go to her blog, it has an outline of the wisdom circles and even how to kind of get connected. So, you have Connie's email. This is also, I think, very helpful. Oh, Stephanie, do you have something?
Yeah, let me just say it's conniezweig.com.
Good.
And
spell it right.
Yeah, okay. Stephanie, did you want to say anything?
I wanted to put in a plug for taking your time with the book. This is going back to, I understand that saying that this is a year-long course or this is a 13-week or whatever, that can be intimidating to people. My personal tendency is to rush through something because that's, my stack of books is so high that I read them very fast. If I read at all, I'm going to read them fast, otherwise they won't get done. But it's been a real blessing working with Emily in particular on using this book, because my experience has been that Emily has been just finding ways to kind of slow it down. So we read a chapter a week, or we meet every 2 weeks, but we read a chapter and then find ways to really explore the concepts. One week it was watercolor. This week it's going to be using clay. And these kinds of just really wonderful activities that bring in more senses and just slow down the processing and allow lots of different lots of different ways of exploring ideas. So
I love that. That's so great.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? There's space if you need or wish or desire. Well, Connie, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to be with us tonight, to explore these concepts, to offer these workshops, and to have taken the time to research and write this book. Because I know it's meant a lot to me and many I've worked with, and I think that's just starting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Connie.
Thank you all. Really made my day. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Any last comment? And the next book is out in a few weeks, and I'm going to form circles around that book as well, which will be more spiritual support.
Thank you for that.
So let's stay in touch. Michelle, I'm such gratitude to you. Please feel free to email me if you decide you want to move ahead, and I'll look forward to hearing from you guys.
All right. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you all. Good night now.
Thank you.